Tell me if any of these sentences sound familiar to you. Guys, I think 2023 is one of the best years for video games
I just
of all
don't have
time.
time for all these games.
So
There's
many
so
games.
many good games.
There's too many games. There's too many fucking games. We get it. Yeah, so in case you couldn't tell, 2023 has been one of the best years for video games of all time. The last year that I can remember was this good was 2017, and even then, this year has been unprecedented in the amount of just 10 out of 10s that have come out. To commemorate such an amazing year for video games, I'm here to tell you guys about some of my favorite games that I played this year. Fair warning though, this does include some games that didn't necessarily come out this year, but that I did play this year. If this video does well enough, then maybe we can make this a yearly thing. Before we get started, I do want to mention two games that I really wanted to play this year, but didn't get the time to, unfortunately. Sea of Stars is something that's been on my wish list before it started being proclaimed as the greatest indie game of all time, and now that it has, I definitely need to get onto it. I actually have bought the game on my Switch, haven't played it yet. Soon, probably early next year. And anyone who's been a fan of my channel for a while now will know that I am a huge fanatic of Mario's turn-based adventures, which is why I need to get to the Super Mario RPG remake as soon as possible. Seriously, it looks amazing, the music sounds amazing, I'm so excited, I can't wait. In total, I played 15 games this year, so I could have called this video a top 15, but YouTube doesn't really like it when I do that, so I'm calling it a ranking video instead. I mean, can you blame me? No, you can't. Anyways, let's go! One of the first things I did this year was finally get my hands on a PS5, and with it came this curious little game that I didn't play until months later, Astro's Playroom. It's probably not a surprise that this game is at the bottom of my list, because while it was pretty fun for what it was a glorified tech demo for the PS5 that I only played for an easy platinum trophy. Astro himself controls incredibly well, and his transformations don't, but I still overall had a fun time. The best part about this game was probably all the references to PlayStation's history. I love how each world contains artifacts from a different console generation, and the amount of Easter eggs referencing various PlayStation franchises were always a treat. Overall, Astro's Playroom was a cute little 4-hour adventure, but easily the bottom of the list. So a couple years back, I decided to play through what I am dubbing the pentology of Mario/Wario platformers on the Game Boy. That was a mouthful. But I never got around to playing Wario's fourth adventure on the Game Boy Advance. Well, I finally did this year because of the release of a certain other game that we'll be talking about later, and... Well, let's start with the positives. This game is absolutely gorgeous and full of personality. I am such a sucker for good-looking 32-bit sprite work, and this game does not disappoint in that category. Everything's so good-looking while also being disgusting at the same time, which is just so perfectly Wario. I love it. Moving on to the gameplay, I feel like there just wasn't much going on here. The elephant in the room is the fact that the game is short. Like, ridiculously short. Like, blink and you'll miss it short. You got 4 worlds with 4 levels and a boss in each, 1 final level and a boss to accompany it, and that's it, that's the game. Normally, I don't have a problem with games being short so long as they make the most of their runtime, but I feel like Wario Land 4 doesn't bring enough to the table to be interesting. I just looked it up while writing this, and there are legitimately 0 new transformations that weren't from a previous Wario Land game, proving my point that this game was mostly just Wario Land, but in 32-bit now. The big new thing was the addition of racing back to the start of the level, and okay, credit where credit is due, that was pretty awesome. But it wasn't enough to save what was otherwise a game that left me feeling perfectly neutral. Not a bad game, but definitely in the bottom half of the Wario games I've played. Still better than Wario Land 3 though. Oh yeah, and also the bosses are like awful. I didn't know how to slot that in, but yeah, they have way too much health, they're usually insufferable to hit. Why is there a timer? Okay, moving on. I am a huge Shovel Knight fan. The Treasure Trove is seriously one of my favorite games of all time. I have yet to give Pocket Dungeon a try, but I've been wanting to play Dig since it was first announced. But when the game came out, there was mostly crickets. Well, I decided to play the game early this year, and now I can see why. I will say that this game is incredibly fun for a little bit, but the key phrase there is for a little bit. It's a perfectly fun Shovel Knight game with a twist of being a roguelite, But it's when you start comparing it to other roguelites that it starts to feel very average. The key to a good roguelite is a variety of items and areas. If you're going to be playing the game over and over again, it better be kept interesting somehow. Well, Shovel Knight Dig has a total of 6 areas and items that mostly don't change the gameplay a whole lot. And yeah, this felt pretty repetitive pretty fast. It felt a lot like Baby's first roguelite to me, which is probably great for those who have never played one before, but for me, someone who has played a lot of great roguelites, Shovel Knight Dig just felt alright. It's such a shame because the core gameplay of Shovel Knight is still here and it's just as fun as it always is. Except the fact that they made the shovel drop automatic now, which kind of sucks. But the rest of the game is where it starts to fall apart. I will say that 100%ing the game is probably why I felt so burnt out on it as a whole, but I took a quick look online and that told me that I'm not the only one who feels this way. Some of the content you unlock from doing it all is genuinely amazing, but it takes so much work to get it all. I like Shovel Knight Dig. It's a good game, but it's not a great one. And just a couple weeks after I beat it, the first major update for the game was announced, but I didn't feel like going back because I already got the true ending, which was stressful as fuck to get, and so I probably won't be going back to check out what they added anytime soon. So this is a game that I actually streamed recently with my good friend Creeps, Doom 2016. If you happen to stop by for any of those streams for even a couple of minutes, then you would know that I am incredibly inexperienced with FPS games, and as such, I am downright awful at them. But even then, this game was an absolute blast. The pure simplicity of grabbing a wide variety of weapons and finding all kinds of ways to tear demons in half is just such a huge dopamine rush every single time, and I love the progression of doing various challenges to become even stronger. Combine this system with tons of collectibles and secrets throughout the game, and you got a game where every single level is incredibly engaging. I always wanted to see how many challenges I could knock out while also grabbing everything I could to minimize replaying levels. But the core gameplay was so satisfying that I didn't mind replaying them in the end. I absolutely cannot wait to get to Doom Eternal, so stay tuned for that. So I mentioned earlier that I got a PS5 this year, and the first thing I played on that console was a little game called Demon's Souls. To be completely honest with you, this is probably the worst Souls game I've ever played. It's clunky, has a lot of outdated mechanics, and has a total of like 2 good bosses. But it's still a Souls-like game that I got to play with my friends, and I am quite frankly obsessed with playing Souls games with my friends. And honestly, having so much experience with the Souls series actually made this game a lot more fun than it would have been if it was my first one. My friends and I were able to find plenty of ways to snap the game's balance in half, which in many ways made up for the lack of good design. Overall, it's clear that this game is beta Dark Souls, but it was a beta Dark Souls that I enjoyed way more than I thought I would. Moving on to another game that I streamed this year, we got Pokémon Scarlet and Violet. This is an interesting one because I'm very vocal about my dislike for modern Pokémon. I thought Gen 8 and the Diamond and Pearl remakes were steaming piles of garbage, but Legends Arceus became my favorite Pokémon game of all time. Scarlet and Violet is somewhere in the middle, where it's leagues better than the former, but a few steps back from the latter. Open world Pokémon is something that I've dreamed about since I was but a wee lad. And while it is great to finally have that, goddamn this game is rushed. Like, oh my god, this is the highest grossing franchise of all time. Really. Alright, oh man. I'm not even going to get into it because you already know that this game is a technical mess, and a testament to just how low effort a company can really go while still getting away with it. Because yes, this game sold fantastically, so their business practice is not going to change. But what's under the surface in this game is a new, innovative, progressive direction for the series, featuring elements that I genuinely loved. A stellar cast of new Pokémon, one of the best stories in the series, and a vast open world that's just a lot of fun to explore. Can you imagine what this game would have been like if it had the time it needed to be fully realized? The world would explode. Unfortunately, it doesn't feature a lot of what made Legends Arceus great, probably because they were being developed at the same time. But it's still one of the best Pokémon games in recent times, and I loved playing through it on stream. Here's to Gen 10 continuing to go in this bright new direction. So this is kind of going to be an out-of-nowhere one. Yoshi's Island. I had played every single mainline Yoshi game except for the original, and I have no idea why. I had a free weekend, so I decided to knock this one off of my infinite backlog. And unsurprisingly, this game is absolutely fantastic. The sprite work is still gorgeous to this day, it's bursting with charm and personality, the controls were tight and precise, the level design is fantastic, the bosses were super good. But you don't need me to tell you all of this. It's Yoshi's Island! This game is a goddamn classic, and I'm very glad I took the weekend to knock it out. Back in February, my good friend Carlos discovered a game by the name of Pizza Tower. And to say he's become obsessed with it would be the biggest understatement of the year. Well, he's been harassing me to play it ever since then, so a couple weeks back, I finally decided to do it. And I even recorded my experience playing through the game with him, and the footage broke. Awesome. Thank you, OBS. As a spiritual successor to Wario Land 4, Pizza Tower is leagues better than Wario Land 4 in every conceivable way. The controls are some of the best I've ever experienced in a 2D platformer, the bosses are genuinely fantastic, and the art style is incredibly charming and unique. I mean it when I say that every single frame in this game deserves to be framed, and I commend the artists for bringing Peppino and crew to life. It's interesting, because Pizza Tower is about as long as Wario Land 4, but the difference is that each and every level is entirely unique through the different themes, mechanics, and transformations to call their own. This game never slows down for a second, but I cherished every second that I got to spend with it. And I think Carlos feels the same way, seeing as he had a few select words for Jeff Keighley and the Game Awards.
Damn.
Out of all of the games that my friends have been asking me to play, Risk of Rain 2 was easily the top of that list. I had at least 4 different people ask me to play it on multiple occasions over the past year. Well, I finally decided to give it a try this year, and this game is fun as fuck. I mean, what can I say? It's everything a roguelite should be. A wide variety of worlds, a metric fuck-ton of game-changing items, and 14 playable characters that all play radically different. Me personally, my favorite characters are Bandit, Acrid, and Void Fiend. There is a limitless number of different combinations and builds to try out, giving this game essentially unlimited replayability. You can feel so insanely overpowered one second and then get turned into paste the very next second. But that feeling of creating the perfect build is truly like no other. And then you go and give it multiplayer? Yes, perfect. This game is perfect. I love it. There's not even anything else to say. It's perfect. I love it. Let's move on. So unless you've been living under a rock for the past month, then you have heard of Lethal Company, whether you've wanted to or not. This game has been everywhere, but that's not been for no reason. This is genuinely one of the greatest multiplayer experiences I've ever had. What's interesting is that when my friends first discovered the game, it was before it blew up, and it only had like 300 reviews on Steam. I was on the fence about joining them at first, but when I did, oh boy, I was hooked. The simple premise of going to various planets and trying to gather scrap while avoiding the various creatures from hell is easy enough for anyone to understand. But the addition of proximity chat is what makes this game a comedic masterpiece. I mean, come on. You've seen the clips. This game is fucking hilarious, while also being incredibly satisfying to play right. I love this game. I've already played a lot, and I'm going to be playing a lot more with my friends. A video of all of us playing the game together will be dropping on the Shenanigang channel sometime in the future, so make sure to subscribe to that channel so that you don't miss out on that. It's going to be amazing. So I mentioned before how I really wanted to play Sea of Stars this year, but I couldn't find the time for it. Part of the reason for this is because I really wanted to play Sabotage Studios' other big title, The Messenger, first, and that I did. And I gotta say, wow. Even after hearing so much about the game when it first came out, this game genuinely shocked me in all of the best ways. It starts out as a pretty solid platformer, taking clear inspiration from Ninja Gaiden, but it's when you enter the second half of the game, and it becomes a Metroidvania where you explore previous levels in both the past and future, which are represented by 8 and 16-bit art styles, that this game becomes something truly unique. I mean it when I say that I have never played anything quite like The Messenger. From its entirely unique twist to its incredible writing to the satisfying gameplay, It's no wonder that this game is considered to be one of the all-time indie greats. Also, the music is absolutely fucking phenomenal. Like, oh my god, every single song is a banger, every single one. I've been listening to it in my free time ever since I beat the game. I love this soundtrack. Amazing stuff. I'm not going to say anything more because I actually recorded my entire playthrough of this game with Trident Fool. And unlike my Pizza Tower recording, I actually got all the footage for it. So look forward to that video sometime in the future. Maybe I could do the same with Sea of Stars? Let me know. I've never been a huge fan of 2D Mario. I don't need to tell you that the infamous new Super Mario Bros. Series isn't that great. But I'd even argue that Mario's Best still doesn't hold a candle to series like Donkey Kong Country or the modern Rayman duology. Those games always felt like they were a tier above the average 2D platformer, and I always thought that Mario could never really compete with them. That is, until the release of Super Mario Bros. Wonder, which I feel finally enters Mario into the upper echelon of 2D platformers. This game is absolutely amazing. From the expressive art style to the creative level themes to the brand new power-ups, this is a vast improvement from anything Mario has ever encountered in the second dimension. And none of this is even mentioning the two biggest game changers in this game, the Wonder Flowers and the badges. These two mechanics completely revolutionize what a 2D Mario can be, and they transform Wonder into a truly one-of-a-kind experience. How many platformers can you say bring something entirely new to the table every single level? Not many, yet this game does exactly that. From transforming into enemies, to walking on the background, to whole-ass musicals, I found myself saying that was awesome or that was fun more often than I have in any game in recent memory. That's the name of the game here, fun. There wasn't a moment where I wasn't having an absolute blast. And if this and Odyssey are symbols of what the future of Mario is going to look like, then I, for one, am incredibly excited for what the Red Plumber has in store next. I never grew up with a PlayStation. I always stuck to Nintendo consoles and sometimes the Xbox. But I didn't experience with the third pillar of consoles for a long time. That all changed when Marvel's Spider-Man launched in 2018, and I had to play it. I finally got my hands on a PS4 and fell in love with what quickly became my favorite open-world game of all time. That is before, Then, this year, the cycle repeated once more, because Marvel's Spider-Man 2 is the reason I got a PS5. Insomniac is doing a lot of damage to my bank account, and I couldn't care less because I fucking love this game. It took everything from both the original and Miles Morales and combined it with so many new ideas to create what is by far the best Spider-Man game yet. I even went back to the original to grab the last 4 trophies I needed for the Platinum, and I couldn't believe how dated it felt in comparison. From the web wings to the new symbiote abilities to the instant fast travel to anywhere on the map, hello? They took a game where the selling point was the movement, and they made the movement a million times better. Couple this with a truly engaging story that both Peter and Miles are deeply involved in, and you have a perfect Spider-Man game here, folks. It's crazy because this game is shorter than the original, yet it's so action-packed that it feels just as rich in content. Spoilers coming up right now, but you got Sandman, Mysterio, the Lizard, the return of Mr. Negative, Wraith, Kraven, Scream, and motherfucking Venom. With teasers for Chameleon, Green Goblin, Silk, and motherfucking Carnage. There's a lot packed into this 30-hour game, and that means that Marvel Spider-Man 2 is an absolute joyride from start to finish. I am so fucking ready for the final chapter of the best Spider-Man story I've ever experienced. For my entire life, I've sworn to never touch an MMO. I tend to want to experience everything a game has to offer before moving on to the next, which is exactly why I should never touch a game that takes a goddamn decade to 100%. Well, one of my girlfriend's favorite games of all time is Final Fantasy XIV, and she decided to introduce it to me so that we could play it together. And shit. Yeah, I'm hopelessly obsessed with this game. I've completed every single dungeon, trial, and raid that I could find, played every available combat class to some extent, beaten everyone's ass in Triple Triad, completed the hunting log, sightseeing log, completed every side and tribal quest that I could find, dabbled in blue magic in the Palace of the Dead. The list goes on, and that's just a realm reborn. I've only just started Heavensward. I love the world they've created, my character is fucking awesome, look at him, and getting a new mount or minion is like injecting crack and cocaine directly into my veins at the same time. But it's not a special game to me just because it's good, even though, trust me, it is. It's special to me because it's become my girlfriend and I's comfort game. It's a relaxing place where we can always spend time together and make some progress, or just do nothing at all. Final Fantasy XIV has become a place to unwind, forget my responsibilities, and spend some time with my wonderful girlfriend that's helped me through so many tough times this year. And for that, it's easily become one of my favorite games of all time. And yet still, one remains. I want to take you back to June this year. Final Fantasy XVI is just around the corner. I personally was planning on skipping it because it seemed to me like a generic AAA version of the iconic franchise. But then I started watching others play the demo. Wait a minute. This game looks really fucking good. The combat looks fun as hell, and I really want to know what happens next in the story. And that fight in the intro looks dope as fuck. Well, alright, fine. I'll fold. Probably won't even be that good anyways. I honestly feel like I'm in the minority when I say this, but Final Fantasy XVI blew my mind into a million pieces. Continuously. And it is my game of the year. The combat is some of the most fun I've ever had in a video game. Using all the summon's different abilities is so fucking cool, and it was a blast experimenting with what worked and what didn't, trying to maximize damage against things like the hunts. I was ecstatic whenever I got a new one to try out, and I instantly went to the training room to test it out. The story is incredible, with so many complex characters and twists. Clive is one of the best video game protagonists I have ever seen, and Ben Starr fucking killed it as his voice actor. I played through the entire game with my girlfriend watching, and we were engaged from beginning to end, with the ending easily bringing us to tears. And best of all, the boss fights. When I beat the Infernal Shadow, I said, that was the coolest fucking thing I've ever seen. When I beat Garuda, I said, that was the coolest fucking thing I've ever seen. When I beat Typhon, I said, that was the coolest fucking thing I've ever seen. When I beat Titan, I said, that was the coolest fucking thing I've ever seen. When I beat Bahamut, I said, that was the coolest fucking thing I have ever seen. And then, okay, Bahamut was actually the coolest fucking thing I've ever seen, but the game was still awesome after that. My point is this. Final Fantasy XVI felt like my first next-gen experience, showing me what the PS5 was truly capable of. I truly felt like I was playing something on a grander scale than anything I had ever played before. And behind those legendary, jaw-dropping moments was just such a fucking fun game to play. Could it be better? Yes. Running around large areas takes a little bit too long, the side quests are incredibly mediocre until the very end, and some may find the gameplay loop to be repetitive. I sure as hell didn't, but I digress. But I don't care about any of that. What I care about is sitting in my room with my girlfriend on call, battling it out with Bahamut himself in space as an Ifrit Phoenix fusion. That experience was simply unforgettable. Thank you for watching, and here's to another year of video games showing the world how legendary they can truly be.